Daily news and analysis. We keep you informed and inspired.
This is World Today.
China's trading services maintained positive growth during the first 4 months. The Chinese city of Yiwu is gearing up for the World Cup with global trade surge. And Israel and Iran trade missile strikes in the most serious confrontation since their April ceasefire. Hello and welcome to World Today. I'm Do Hongyu in Beijing. To listen to this episode again or to catch up on previous episodes, you can download our podcast by searching World Today. Our first story. China's trading services maintained positive growth during the first 4 months of this year. Exports saw robust expansion and the trade deficit narrowed significantly. According to the Commerce Ministry, China's total trading services reached nearly 2.5 trillion yuan, or around $367 billion, up around 5% on a yearly basis. Knowledge-intensive services continue to drive export growth. Meanwhile, travel service exports jumped over 30%, the fastest growth rate among the top 5 service export categories. The services sector is taking on a larger role in the Chinese economy, accounting for over 60% of GDP. So what is driving this momentum? My colleague Zhao Yang spoke with Yan Liang, professor of economics at Willamette University.
So, Professor Yan Liang, thank you very much for joining us. China's services trade grew by 4.9% in the first 4 months of this year. What is driving this, and what does this tell us about the broader state of China's economy?
Well, I think the first 4 months we're seeing very strong service trade growth, and it's primarily driven by a 30.4% surge in travel service exports and a 5.1% expansion in the knowledge-intensive service. So I think what we are seeing here is that the inbound tourism rebounded very sharply. In terms of knowledge economy, right now it's making up around 44% of the total service trade. And it's led by really strong growth in both cultural and entertainment services, as well as intellectual property rights fees. So I think what that shows is that, China's economy has been transforming, and now you're seeing more and more the kinds of knowledge-intensive exports, and you're also seeing, more and more foreign tourists coming to China. They shop in China and enjoy the very unique cultural experiences. And I think it also reflects a rising, global demand for this kind of high-quality service that China exports to the rest of the world.
And as you mentioned, among major services categories, travel services exports jumped over 30%, getting the fastest growth. So what do you think are the main factors driving this strong momentum?
Well, I think there are a number of factors. So for one, I think there has been, strong, I would say, policy support and in terms of trade facilitation when it comes to tourism. So for example, visa-free expansion. Now the unilateral 30-day exemptions expand now to over 50 countries in the world. So in other words, foreign tourists have much easier time to come to China, without needing to acquire a visa first. And so I think that really helped to facilitate, inbound tourism. But in addition to that, I think there are a lot of other, accessory kind of policies, for example, tax refunds. There has been, streamlined departure tax workflows that help to really triple user volumes for the kinds of tax refund policies. So it allows foreigners to come to China to shop easily and get their tax refunds. And so that, I think, really encouraged the kind of tourism spending. There's also, the transits has been much easier. And also there has been, mobile payments that help foreign credit cards to make payments in China very conveniently using, local apps. So I think the kinds of convenience is really helping, tourists to come to China. In addition to that, I think there's also a lot more, I would say, utilizing of social media and many of these influencers, right? Talking about, experiencing China, becoming a Chinese, China maxing. So there's a lot of positive, I would say, experience sharing on those social media. And so I think that, again, attract a lot of foreigners to come to China, not just to shop, in terms of a low price, high quality products, but really come to enjoy, China's very unique landscape, but also a lot of cultural events. And in addition to the above, I think there are also many other convenience like flight connectivity has been restored, and that helped to boost international air routes. Also very diverse offerings in terms of theme parks, cultural events that I mentioned earlier, and also smart borders, and that I think also in some ways facilitated kind of visits from foreigners. So all of this, I think, really helped to drive the tourism in terms of the kinds of service exports.
And knowledge-intensive services account for more than 44% of China's total services trade. So why is this development particularly important?
Well, I think the service, knowledge-intensive service expansion, I think it's important for three different reasons. One is I think it really both indicates but also continue to drive structural economic transformation in China. In other words, China is moving up very quickly from the past very low margin manufacturing to now both advanced manufacturing, but also knowledge intensive service production. So I think that really indicates China's value chain ascent. And of course, this will continue to drive China to continue to innovate, to develop its technology, to continue to upgrade its industries and the service sector, and boost also, domestic research and development to achieve more technological independence. So I think that is very important for economic transformation going forward. And second, I think it's important in the sense it helped to balance trade in terms of enhance the kind of trade resilience. Because we know when you rely a lot on trade in merchandise in goods, there's some vulnerability, right? When global supply chain is affected or disrupted, when the global shipping or transportation industry is under some stress, then this will affect trade significantly. But now, if you are developing service trade, and a lot of this rely on digital delivery. So I think that helped to enhance trade resilience. It helped to balance trade, diversifying the kinds of products, right, that China conducts trade, and it also provides stable revenue streams because once you export service in terms of, for example, software or maintenance services for, let's say, green tech, this usually generates stable revenue flows because customers will continuously rely on these kinds of services. So I think that's good for, in terms of the trade resilience. And finally, I think it also helps to strive more sort of economic balance at home because service industries create jobs. And so when, we rely more and more on service sector to create jobs, then the kind of service expansion in trade also create more job opportunities domestically. So I think for all those three reasons, expansion in domestic activities, transform economic structure at home, enhance trade resilience. So I think all of these indicate that knowledge-intensive service trade is important for China.
And how are emerging technologies such as AI, cloud computing, and digital platforms reshaping China's services trade?
Well, I think these are all important for two reasons. One is that they directly improve the kinds of products, the service products that China can export abroad. So, for example, when it comes to AI, when China, technology in AI technology is growing, China is able to develop, a lot of very competent AI models at a very cheap cost. So I think that many other countries, the users wants to import the kinds of AI services that China provide. So in terms of the content of trade, I think when you develop these technologies in AI, in cloud services, then you would have more demand, right, for China's service exports. And the second reason is because I think, both in terms of AI, cloud, and digital platform, they also help to deliver the service. So, for example, when foreigners they're importing China's software, the digital platform help to deliver these kind of softwares. And also when it comes to, digital design and in terms of design automation. And again, that would be aided by the kinds of digital platform to deliver this kinds of services. And also, when it comes to many other, in terms of computing services, when it comes to virtual asset generations, all of this require cloud infrastructure and digital platform to deliver the kind of services. So I think these technologies, again, in two ways, both in terms of providing the content for exports, but also help to improve the delivery methods of these service products.
And many analysts say the future lies in deeper integration between manufacturing and modern services. So what does that integration look like in practice?
Well, in practice, I think, first of all, many of these smart technologies could be integrated into advanced manufacturing. So when you embed these smart Internet of Things into the production process, for example, you could add sensors for predictive maintenance. That would help to enhance productivity in the manufacturing sector. So, and we're also seeing, many of these industrial robots, humanoid robots included, are being installed on factory floors. So that is sort of a modern combining the AI services with the manufacturing sector. So I think that is one way when you see the integration, right, between manufacturing and service. In addition to that, I think in terms of leveraging big data, that also helped to provide real-time operational efficiency analytics. So again, using a lot of these data, you're able to analyze the manufacturing processes and help to improve the efficiency of it. Then you are also thinking, for example, integrate these smart technologies into logistics. So you're able to, for example, integrate automated supply chain tracking. So you can design the best route for your, for your transportation and for the logistics. In addition to that, I think there are many other ways. For example, when it comes to advanced design, these are also really important to really, build very efficient production process, as well as provide, life cycle management using these smart technologies. So all of these, I think, are important to using these kinds of modern technologies, especially in the service aspects, to improve production. And so that allow companies also to achieve higher profit margins, help them to, to continue to generate innovations and monitor their production process and provide resilience in their production cycle.
That was Yan Liang, professor of economics at Willamette University. Coming up, the Chinese city of Yiwu is gearing up for the World Cup with global trade surge. This is World Today. Stay tuned.
Hello, I'm Yan Liang, Kramer Chair Professor of Economics at Willamette University. In a rapidly changing world, staying informed has never been more important. World Today delivers sharp analysis, global perspectives, and the stories behind the headlines. It is your trusted source to understand what's shaping our world. World Today, bringing the world closer.
Welcome back. China's manufacturing hub of Yiwu is experiencing a surge in business activities ahead of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Official data show that in the first quarter of this year, the city exported 2.8 billion yuan, or about $412 million worth of sporting goods and equipment, up 12% from a year earlier. Known as the world supermarket, the city has been preparing for the tournament since last year, with factories and traders ramping up production and shipping sports-related products to markets around the world. Taking advantage of the fact that the World Cup will be hosted by the United States, Canada, and Mexico, Yiwu merchants have also introduced customized products tailored to consumers in those markets. Now, for more, we're joined by Dr. Zhou Mi, Senior Research Fellow with the Chinese Academy of International Trade and Economic Cooperation. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Zhou.
Thanks for having me.
First of all, what is behind Yiwu's strong performance ahead of the 2026 FIFA World Cup?
I still remember that 4 years ago, I was watching the World Cup in another province named Guangxi. So I think that the 4 years has passed and many people are suffering from the very high inflation in the world. So I think that to talk about the strong performance, people really want to be join in such kind of a very important activities as usual. But the problem is that when they are trying to buy the things for the World Cup, they are facing many challenges. First of all, is how much they will spend on these products they want to buy from some people. And the second, I think that whether they can buy some of the product they really want to have, or they only have very limited choices. So Yiwu performance are showing the world that Yiwu still are very important origins of these products for this World Cup. And the people are really believe that when they are trying to place an order, they can enjoy a very good price and together with many of the innovation and very sustainable supply. I think that all of these three factors are the Yiwu's performance on the trade. And World Cup, many of these people are really want to buy a lot of things. I mean, not just for the consumers, but for the retailers and the wholesalers, they want to buy more things so they can rely on EU's productions and trying to get connections with this city.
Now, EU merchants have launched customized products for markets in the US, in Canada, and Mexico. How does this localized operation reflect EU's evolved trading capabilities over the past decades?
I agree with you because when I went to EU several times last year, I really saw that there are so many new changes in EU, no matter from the patterns of the distributions on the different products or whether there are more introduction about the new technology. So I think that is a kind of a very important ideas for the people in the EU. They're not just trying to show the world, show the market what they really have, but they really want to listen to the market. So they have many investigations. They have a very clear and very sensitive reflection on the demand change. So based on that event of this World Cup, I think that many EU merchants are really trying to give the people more choices, no matter from the things put on in the kitchen or in the dining tables or in the living room. I think that they are really giving people more surprises. So in the past decades, EU people are always doing like that. They are trying to trying to look at and then feel the change of the world market, and they really want to put more technology to support the change. So it's not only about the quantities, it's also about the qualities. For the quality design, I think that EU people are just our important window connecting China's manufacturing sectors with the world demand. I think these are really the way that they are having more evolution abilities.
And now there are reports saying that this city is moving from competing on price to competing on creativity and patents. What is driving this transformation?
Well, first of all, I would say that competition is definitely the world. The competition is not only happening between EU, between Chinese merchants with foreign merchants, but also among the EU people themselves. So if you go to the EU city, you can find that all the areas are located according to their contributions and also the categories. So all the similar products are exhibited in the same areas or not far from each other. So when they want to be special, they need to try to do something have its own characteristics, because it's not only about the small amount of products, it's about sustainable connections. So based on competition, that is the first one. And the second, I would say that you also benefit from China's manufacturing. China's manufacturers are able to have a more flexibilities on the production about the different kind of products. Maybe some of them are not in a large content or large quantities for demand, but they are still able to change their patterns accordingly in a very quick speed. So this is the second reason. And the third one, I would say that is technology and also the new ideas about the innovation. When the evil people are trying to do more, they are having these factors to improve its abilities to adapt to the world.
And now let's move on to EU's industrial chain. What do you think is the role that EU's industrial chain play in meeting the global demand for World Cup merchandise?
Well, yeah, as I said, that industrial chains are not just based in Yiwu. Actually, Yiwu is the window. It has many connections with the factories in Jiangsu, also in Guangdong and in Zhejiang. So they are connecting with the supply side in a very quick and very tight relation. The industrial chains are really important for us to have a better supply in EU. When the customers place an orders, the orders are shipped directly to the factories, and the factories are going to change their models according to the demand. So these are really a quick response to meet the demand. And I think that secondly is that the industrial chains are really be able to deal with the uncertainties because we are seeing many geopolitical reasons and other reasons are affecting the logistic a lot. But EU people can ship their products on time. I think that is really important for them to keep its reputations and have a good relations with customers.
Yiwu is often called the world's supermarket. Then what is the development philosophy that has made it grow from a very small county to a global trade hub over the past 20 years?
If you have been to Yiwu Airport, you will find that Yiwu Airport is the most diversified airport, I mean, for the people all around the world. It is even more than other cities in China. I think that is because the reputation are really good. So the philosophy is trying to keep your customers. I think most of these people are in EU are believing that when they are doing businesses, they need to do it again and again. So they are not just trying to deal with transaction in an uncarefully way. They are really taking good care of those transactions. They are going to build the reputation. So the good reputation and good quality of the goods are spread from one's customers to their customers and also their good friends. I think that based on that kind of reputation, you are building our wider and wider networks. That is why we are seeing that use networks of doing business is spreading very quickly.
And building on that, what lessons do you think the other domestic cities in China can learn from Yiwu's development model?
Well, there were several. First of all, that when you are a city not having too many resources, you don't have to worry too much about that because you are not just in our isolated market. China is going to be very strong and will have a better integration about the different parts of China. So you are able to connecting the other advantages of China, like the manufacturing, like the market, or even the logistic and the talent. You can benefit from that by connecting all the resources. And second, I think that if you are going to support the development in the certain areas, you need to have a certain policy environment. This environment is not just trying to give people more preference or preferent treatment like low taxes. You need to do more to give the people more confidence. And that is important for you to have a better environment for people to live. And third one, I would say that innovation will always bear in mind. We need to not just follow our suits like before. We need to try to change our ways of doing businesses, and we need to update those kind of ways by what we have been doing according to the change of the technology.
And finally, how can Yiwu keep its competitive advantages, especially when facing with rising global trade risks and fierce market competition around the world?
Well, that is a good question, and that is what we are now doing to help them to make a better use of the globalization. The EU market is trying to go abroad. They are establishing different methods or ways on the businesses abroad in different countries, like some shopping centers, some of these similar hubs in the certain areas. I think that is a really good thing because when they are going to develop according to the change in the local demand, they are able to feel it quicker. They are able to respond it quicker. So network is very important, especially in the globalization. Such a time that a lot of global supply chains are under reconstructions. So you can do more by learning, by trying to give a stable environment, and also to do more innovation according to the new demand of the world.
Okay, thank you very much. That was Dr. Zhou Mi, Senior Research Fellow with the Chinese Academy of International Trade and Economic Cooperation. You're listening to World Today. To listen to this episode again or to catch up on previous episodes, you can download our podcast by searching World Today. We'll be back after a short break.
Hello, my name is Alessandro Golombiewski Teixeira. I'm a professor of public policy and management at Tsinghua University in Beijing. I am a great listener of The World Today. In my opinion, The World Today is one of the best China radio programs. In The World Today, we can get the best news and analysis in what is happening now in the world. So please come to join us.
You're listening to World Today with me, Do Hongyu, in Beijing. Israel and Iran have traded missile strikes in the most serious crossfire since their April ceasefire. Israel has launched strikes on central and western Iran. Explosions have been heard in Tehran, Isfahan, and Tabriz. The attacks came after Iran fired a missile barrage at northern Israel. Iran says the strikes were a response to Israel's expanded military operations in Lebanon. U.S. President Donald Trump has urged Iran to return to the negotiating table. He says he's pressed Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to hold off on retaliation. For more, my colleague Gao Yingshi spoke with Dr. Zhang Chuchu, Deputy Director of the Center for Middle Eastern Studies and Fudan University.
On June the 7th local time, Iran launched a warning missile strike on Israel in response to Israel expanding its military operation in Lebanon. So Israel then struck back against Iran. It was the first of such kind of strike since the U.S.-Iran ceasefire in April. In your opinion, what triggered this escalation?
Well, my observation is that the immediate trigger was Israel's expanded military operations in Lebanon, which targeted Hezbollah infrastructure and positions. So I think the problem here is that there have always been differences in understanding regarding the ceasefire issue, because Iran always demands a comprehensive ceasefire from the United States, Israel, and the Iranian-led Middle Eastern Resistance Force. But Israel believes that a ceasefire just happens between the United States, Israel, and Iran alone. And for Israel's part, it believes that this allows it to intensify its attacks on Hezbollah in Lebanon, and it tries to push for the demilitarization of southern Lebanon. Therefore, Iran recently launched multiple waves of missile attacks against Israel, and this serves the purpose of demonstrating that Iran's conditions in the negotiations are non-negotiable, and that Iran will not abandon its regional allies, including Hezbollah. And for Israel now, it has also struck military targets in central and western Iran. So I think right now both sides are trying to gain the strategic initiatives at the bargaining table by demonstrating their military superiority.
Facing the escalation, U.S. President Donald Trump has urged Iran to stop and return to the negotiating table, while also warning Israel not to retaliate against Iran. He even expressed displeasure that Israel's airstrikes on Lebanon were carried out without coordinating with the United States in advance. The US and Israel are supposed to be allies, and why is Trump publicly warning Israel?
Well, I think the United States pursues a transactional strategy, and its stance is dynamically adjusted. Right now, I think it desires negotiation, de-escalation of the conflicts, and a reduction in its involvement in the war. But I think it also doesn't want to make too many compromises in negotiations. And that means right now it faces dilemmas. So previously, after the United States showed a strong intention to compromise, the two sides were close to reaching a memorandum of understanding. However, the problem was that Trump later wanted to add some more very tough clauses at the last minute, which caused Iran's willingness to negotiate to decline. And subsequently, we have seen the escalation of clashes between Israel, Iran, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and that was also aimed at pressure to force talks. So Israel and the United States, they compelled Iran to make concessions rather than hoping for a large-scale escalation of the conflict. So therefore, I think right now, to prevent the Israeli-Iranian conflict from spiraling out of control, Trump has made this statement, and I think his demand for restraint from Iran is to continue making progress in the negotiations. However, it's very important to note that his demand for Israel to accept any agreement reached by the United States and Iran is more complex, because on the one hand, it serves as a reminder to Israel that the United States is the dominant party in the relationship, and in the end, it's the United States that is going to make the decisions. And at the same time, on the other hand, I think it's also a performance to show Iran that the United States is still willing to negotiate, but if unforeseen circumstances arise, it would be an act of Israel alone. And see, the United States has already demonstrated its disagreement with Israel's actions.
And can you explain a little bit where exactly do the two countries diverge on the Iran issue?
Well, I think obviously there are a lot of disagreements at this point because so far the United States wants to control the cost of the war. I mean, yes, at least both the United States and Israel, they want to undermine Iran. But the difference is that the United States, it doesn't want to keep just pouring money and weapons into the region, and it doesn't want to invest in it indefinitely. Especially Donald Trump he pays close attention to the approaching midterm election, whereas Israel is different because it wants to completely weaken Iran so that it has no regional rivals, and it also tries to expand its own power and its own influence in the region. So that is why Israel, at least Netanyahu, tries to expand this war, and he doesn't want to just stop there. So that is why Israel has also and always encouraged the United States to take a hardline position towards Iran.
It seems that the core of the conflict is actually the Lebanon issue. How is the situation in Lebanon tied to the broader U.S.-Iran negotiations?
Right, I think Lebanon is a very important variable at this stage. As we have just discussed, there are a lot of differences between the understanding of the negotiations between Iran and Israel, the United States. So for Iran, right now, it does not have a lot of cards to play, and Hezbollah is Iran's most capable and close, intimate ally. Israeli operations against it are seen by Tehran as attacks on Iranian strategic depth. And also, we have to note that Iran does not trust the United States and Israel. So for Iran, it is very much afraid that, okay, even though there are negotiations between Iran and the United States and Israel, but let's say if Israel continues to attack Hezbollah, then it means that in the end, Iran's regional allies will all be undermined. And what would happen if the United States and Israel are going to launch a new round of attack against Iran? Then at that point, Iran is going to be very much isolated. So at this stage, Iran insists on a comprehensive ceasefire between the two sides, and it shows that it's not going to abandon Hezbollah. But since Israel has no intention to stop, then actually that is a variable that can affect the ongoing talks between Iran and the United States.
And beyond the military conflict, there's another headline drawing attention recently. The Pentagon has raised its counterintelligence threat level for Israel to the highest tier. So why did the Pentagon make such kind of move against its ally, Israel?
Well, I think there are two contexts. The first thing is that since the Gaza war in 2023, and also right now there is the U.S.-Israeli war with Iran, So right now there are a lot of differences regarding Israel within the United States itself. So there are a lot of disagreements, and also the different interests between Israel and the United States have risen to surface. And on the other hand, we can also see that a lot of people are saying intensified Israeli espionage targeting the United States officials are happening, particularly the United States positions in talks with Iran. So there are reports like that. So that actually causes concerns that Israeli intelligence efforts cross the line amid policy differences over how to end the Iranian war. But I think in general, we have to note that this is notable because Israel is a close ally of the United States. It is important to acknowledge that espionage can happen between even very friendly allies. And right now, I would say the upgrade reflects real strains in the relationship between Israel and the United States. But in general, I think it does not mean the alliance is broken, but just it shows that the Pentagon is treating Israeli intelligence collection as a more serious insider threat than usual.
That was Dr. Zhang Chuchu, Deputy Director of the Center for Middle Eastern Studies at Fudan University, talking with my colleague Gao Yingshi. Coming up, leaders of Britain, France, and Germany voice support for direct Ukraine-Russia dialogue. This is World Today. We'll be back.
Welcome. I am Chuchu Zhang, Deputy Director at the Center for Middle Eastern Studies at Fudan University. On the World Today program, we will dive beyond the headlines to uncover the stories, trends, and impacts that connect states across the globe. Join me on World Today.
Welcome back. The leaders of Britain, France, and Germany have voiced support for direct dialogue between Ukraine and Russia. This came after they held talks with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in London. The three leaders issued a joint statement with Zelensky after the meeting, saying they backed direct Ukraine-Russia talks with the active participation of the United States and Europe. They called for an immediate and complete ceasefire, saying the current line of contact should serve as the starting point for negotiations. The leaders also discussed post-ceasefire security arrangements for Ukraine. For more, we're joined by Kamal Makili Aliyev, Associate Professor at the School of Global Studies and the University of Gothenburg. Thank you so much for joining us, Professor Aliyev. First of all, what is the main purpose behind the joint position of the four countries for direct dialogue and an immediate full ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia?
Well, the main purpose is to create a credible diplomatic pathway while also maintaining support for Ukraine. Britain, France, Germany, and Ukraine, they're essentially trying to, demonstrate that they are not opposed to negotiations, but that the negotiations must take place under conditions that do not reward military force. So the call for an immediate ceasefire serves two functions. It first of all, it aims to stop the fighting and reduce the human and economic cost of the war. And second, it establishes a framework with which serious political negotiations could begin. The underlying message is that diplomacy and military support are not contradictory, and that they can be pursued simultaneously, which we see in many other conflicts. So there is a broader geopolitical objective here, I think, that European leaders want to ensure that Europe remains directly involved in the shaping of any future settlement. They don't want to risk that being, outside the process. And since the outcome of this war, will have kind of long-term consequences for European security, they do not want decisions about Ukraine's future to be made exclusively by Washington and Moscow.
And how significant is this joint decision, and what messages does it send to both Moscow and Kiev?
Well, its significance lies primarily in the demonstration of unity. At various points during the war, there have been, questions about whether Western support for Ukraine might weaken over time, and this joint position sends the opposite signal. To Moscow, the message is that Europe remains politically committed to Ukraine, for example, and it continues to coordinate closely on the major strategic questions. It suggests that European governments are willing to support negotiations, but not on terms that would undermine Ukrainian sovereignty. So to Kiev, the message is also equally important. European partners, they're basically reaffirming their support while also signaling that they see diplomacy as an increasingly important part of overall strategy. So in other words, Ukraine is not being abandoned, but it's being encouraged to think about a possible transition from battlefield dynamics to political negotiations.
The statement calls for an immediate and complete ceasefire based on the current line of contact. How realistic is such a proposal?
Well, it's only relatively realistic. As a pathway to peace, it becomes, much more complicated. History shows that wars often end in stages, and ceasefire freezes the active fighting, but it doesn't resolve the underlying political disputes. So in this case of Ukraine, the fundamental disagreements, they remain still enormous. And Ukraine seeks the restoration of its sovereignty and security guarantees at the same time, as Russia continues, in my view, to see the conflict through a very different strategic lens, much more broader than Ukraine, for example. For Ukraine, it's us, and for Russia, it's the whole world behind it as well. So the current line of contact is being proposed as a practical starting point, but it's not the final political settlement. And the challenge here is that both sides may actually fear that a ceasefire will simply allow the other side to regroup and prepare for future confrontation. So stopping fighting may be achievable, I know, again, relatively realistically, but reaching an agreement on what comes next is far more difficult task, and I don't think it's going to come anytime soon.
Then how might this coordinated effort by Britain, France, and Germany affect Europe's role in the Ukraine conflict and in regional security affairs?
I think it reinforces a trend that has been visible for several years. Europe is gradually becoming a more active geopolitical and security actor. What is particularly notable here is that London, Paris, and Berlin are increasingly acting together on strategic issues. They are not replacing the United States, and they will still rely heavily on the transatlantic cooperation, but they're showing a greater willingness to shape events themselves rather than simply react to them. So this matter goes beyond Ukraine. The war has fundamentally changed how European governments think about security, defense spending, and even strategic responsibility. So if Europe plays a leading role in any future ceasefire or post-war arrangements, that would further strengthen its position as a strong security actor in its own neighborhood.
And how do you think Russia might respond to the joint position of Britain, France, and Germany for a direct dialogue?
Well, for diplomatical reasons, I think Russia will likely respond with a mixture of openness and caution. On one hand, Moscow has consistently argued that negotiations should take place, so it's unlikely to reject the idea of dialogue, outright and totally. But on the other hand, Russia's conditions for negotiations remain substantially different from those of Ukraine and its European partners. The key issue here is that both sides define the starting point differently. European leaders, they speak about the negotiations that preserve Ukraine's sovereignty and future security, and Russia continues to emphasize territorial realities created by the war and its own security concerns. So as a result, Russia may be, it may welcome the language of talks while resisting many of the political conditions attached to them. So we may see diplomatic engagement, but I don't think necessarily rapid progress.
And in your opinion, what are the major obstacles that could prevent direct Ukraine-Russia talks from producing meaningful progress toward a lasting peace agreement?
Well, the biggest obstacle is that, this conflict is about much more than territory. There are unresolved questions about borders, security guarantees, sanctions, reconstruction, accountability, Ukraine's future geopolitical orientation. These are issues that go to the core of how both sides view their long-term security. So there's also a lot of profound lack of trust. After years of war, both sides doubt the intentions of the other. And even if the negotiations begin, every proposal will be viewed through the lens of future security risks. So that is why the direct talks are important, but they should not be seen as a quick solution. And negotiations can begin relatively quickly, but building a sustainable peace is going to take much longer because of those kind of really, really big issues are going to be on the table.
And finally, the meeting also touched upon post-ceasefire security arrangements for Ukraine. What core challenges exist in reaching relevant agreements?
This is probably the most difficult issue in the entire peace process. I think that's why you're asking the question. It goes directly to the to the issue of what happens after the guns fall silent, right? This is always the difficult one. Ukraine wants guarantees that are strong enough to prevent another invasion in the future. From Kyiv's perspective, I think an arrangement that simply pauses the conflict without providing meaningful security would be insufficient, to say the least. But for Russia, at the same time, it remains, Russia remains deeply opposed to arrangements that would strengthen Ukraine's integration with Western security circles. Read NATO, for example, right? European governments are trying to find a balance between providing credible protection for Ukraine and avoiding a framework that Moscow will automatically reject. So the fundamental challenge, I think, is finding a security architecture that all parties can live with, and that requires reconciling three very different objectives: Ukraine's demand for protection, Russia's security concerns, and Europe's need for long-term stability. And reaching agreement on that question, I think that's the ultimate answer to if the ceasefire will be a successful point of a start of going towards peace negotiations.
Thank you very much. That was Kamal Makili-Aliyev, Associate Professor at the School of Global Studies at the University of Gothenburg. Coming up, the EU Parliament has decided to switch to a French search engine from Google in a tech sovereignty push. This is World Today. Stay tuned.
Hello, I am Dr. Digby James Wren, a political analyst and international relations scholar specializing in China area studies. World Today offers unmatched in-depth perspectives on China's politics, economics, business, technology and society. World Today's team of reporters and contributors provides valuable information from all of the world's major economies. I hope you can join me on World Today for the very best insights and news from China, on China, and help to build a better understanding of China's role in the world today.
Welcome back. The European Parliament says it'll switch to French search engine Quant from Google in order to reduce its reliance on US technology in favor of local alternatives. The European Commission also announced measures on chips, cloud computing services, and artificial intelligence as part of its Buy and Use European drive. The change will be applied automatically, though users will still be able to select alternative search engines. A parliament spokesperson said the move is part of a larger framework of actions aimed at reducing reliance on non-EU digital tools and promoting European-based privacy-focused services. For more, we're joined by Dr. George Zygopoulos, Director of EU-China Programs and Senior Research Fellow at the European Institute of Nice. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Zygopoulos.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, the European Parliament has decided to switch its default search engine from Google to a French search engine. Could you further elaborate on the purpose behind this decision?
Well, I would see signs of symbolism in the decision of the European Parliament to replace Google with a European digital company. And I'm saying that because the European Union is insisting on the necessity to promote technological sovereignty. And having said that, if the European Parliament and the members of Parliament and the staff working there are using a European digital company, the signal which will be sent to European citizens is that it's worth trying European digital companies. But of course, I don't see much beyond symbolism, as there is a large discussion concerning the capacity of European digital companies to practically replace American ones in the European market.
Mm-hmm. And do you think this is a wise or right choice for Europe? And how would you assess the importance of this decision for Europe?
Well, politically speaking, it is a significant decision because the European Parliament is determined to rely on a European digital company. But of course, the question is up to what extent European consumers will be prepared to follow suit. We have to wait and see up to what extent this will be possible in the future. But for now, I wouldn't see much beyond symbolism as far as the decision of the European Parliament is concerned.
Mm-hmm. And the European Commission also announced new measures on semiconductors, cloud computing, and artificial intelligence. What are the main concerns driving efforts to reduce reliance on non-EU digital platforms and services?
For some years, the European Commission is attempting to strengthen European legislation around the area of technology, whether it is social media companies, how they operate, or artificial intelligence, or cloud computing services, or other things. This is placed in the interest of the European Union, the European Commission, to promote the European technological sovereignty, and the European Commission wants to set the rules, if I could say so, in this area. So that's why we come across so many initiatives as far as European legislation is concerned. Again, the question is up to what extent legislation itself is sufficient in order for the European Commission to achieve the goal of technological sovereignty, but certainly it is an area that deserves some attention.
Mm-hmm. Then do you think Europe have enough capabilities to reduce maybe at least a little bit reliance on U.S. technologies?
Well, I would say that it is too early to say so. Several American digital companies have been very successful in the European market, and even in the years of President Joe Biden, there were transatlantic frictions concerning rules that the American digital companies need to abide. We have to wait and see up to what extent the new legislation initiatives of the European Commission will be the beginning of a process where more and more European citizens will start relying on European digital companies. I would say that the task is very difficult, but at the same time, it is a good beginning for the European Union, because if the European Union wants practically to become technologically autonomous, then it needs to rely on its own companies.
Mm-hmm. This might be the beginning of a move. Then how will this beginning maybe affect the competitive landscape of Europe's digital market?
Well, for several years, European digital companies are attempting to provide services that satisfy the needs of European citizens. But technologically speaking, the American digital companies have an advantage. So the European legislation initiatives attempt as much as possible to deal with this advantage of the American digital companies in order for the European digital companies who are lagging behind for the time being to gain some ground. I would say that it is very difficult as far as European consumers are concerned, because European consumers tend to use American digital services. So for them to make a switch from an American digital company into a European one, more time is required. And at the same time, they need to be also satisfied with the services that European digital services are providing. So it is in the hands of the European digital companies to provide services that will make European citizens to switch from American into European digital companies.
Mm-hmm. And in the long run, what influence will the Buy and Use European drive have on global digital technology, cooperation, and competition?
Well, as I said before, the European Union attempts to set the rules in the new era of technology, and that's why it relies so much on legislation. But this is not enough for the European Union, so more innovation is required. So the emphasis, in my opinion, should be diverted toward innovation, especially for the young generation of scientists who have the technological capacity and the intellectual talent in order to make steps toward the direction of helping the European Union to become technologically autonomous. But only by setting the rules, I would say that the European Union will still lag behind the United States and China. More is required, especially in the area of innovation.
Thank you very much. That was Dr. George Tsogopoulos, Director of EU-China Programs and Senior Research Fellow at the European Institute of Nice. And that's it for all the time of this edition of World Today. To listen to this episode again or to catch up on previous episodes, you can download our podcast by searching for World Today. For further discussion, you can follow us on X and CGTN Radio. I'm Do Hongyu in Beijing. Thank you so much for listening. Bye for now.